As I told you, Trevor Ombije is here with us in studio, and Faisal Ahmed, the man with the numbers, is also here in studio. So, Bulls and Bears has officially kicked off. Trevor?
Yeah, first of all, don't believe all the rumors from the media people. My eyes could not open. I had a problem with that.
No, that was Faisal who said that.
What is going on?
He didn't wake up
with
this
friends
morning.
like this one, who needs enemies? Now, let me introduce our guest real quick before we get into the numbers from Faisal there. We have Honorable Saulo Busolo, Chair, Kenya National Alliance of Sugarcane Farmers, also former chairperson, Kenya Sugar Board, and also the former MP for Webuye. Thank you so much for making time. Followed by David Osian, CEO, Crestwood Marketing and Communication, and also a board member for Chemelil Sugar Company. Thanks for making time this morning. And Honorable Kipruto Arap Kirwa, former Agriculture Minister. Thank you so much for making time. Nobody is better placed to talk about the sugar industry like these three gentlemen.
That is for sure.
We'll find out why the farmers disagree with the report that was given to the president and what they think is the solution. But Faisal still has the numbers for us. Let's set the pace of this discussion for you. Faisal?
I understand we're talking about sugar, but the numbers I have are a bit on the salty side. So
look at you.
See what you did there.
I know.
in terms of acreage, it's actually reduced from 223,605, that is in 2015. That is the acreage that the cane plantations were sitting on, to 191,000. That is in 2018. In a span of 3 years, we've lost about 31,000 in terms of acreage that was being covered by sugar plantations. The tonnage also, when it comes to production, has reduced by around 11 tons. And that is also something we'll be getting into. And lastly, before we actually move on to the discussion, is the importation of sugar during this particular, rather the sugar that has been milled during this particular period. It has reduced to 45%, and that number actually gets worse. By last year, September, 70% of all sugar that was being used in the country was actually imported, with factories, or rather mills like Muhoroni, Transmara, Sukari, Kibos, Mumias, Kwale and Chemelil being shut down. That could actually have attributed to the 70% importation of sugar. Now, Trevor, maybe if you could just turn over to our panelists. Is this particular sugar report going to save the sugar industry? That's what the farmers want to know.
Saulo.
I don't think it's going to save the sugar industry. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't have a solution. One, because the report is skewed to kind of keep the status quo in place. In the first place, if it's a report to save the sugar industry, there is no farmers on that task force. This is task force composed of bureaucrats from Kilimo, governors. Where is the farmer? That is the issue. If it's to resolve the issue of the farmer, there's nothing as far as I'm concerned. And I believe some of the issues that are supposed to have been resolved, and I'm glad Honorable Kirwa is here. I was a member of his task force when he was Minister for Agriculture, and that task force is what resolved a number of issues in the industry. But this one, I do not think it has a solution.
Right.
It's a bureaucratic structure to keep the status quo in place, to keep the bureaucrats who have been earning from the industry, to defend the public mills that have been mismanaged. And there is no recommendation in the report even to apprehend them. You know, the thieves, the corrupt, the mismanagers, they are all in place. Nothing in the report to cap that.
David, what's your general feel of the report? Are you happy with it?
No, I think Saulo is right to the extent that when you do not include the major players in any process, then the product of that process is sometimes questionable. I, however, do not want to throw out the whole report as being entirely useless, because it recommends very, very helpful things. Like, for example, it reintroduces the Sugar Development Levy. Now, the Sugar Development Levy over time has been the fund that is utilized to maintain factories that companies can go borrow from in terms of infrastructurally maintaining their companies. It had been removed. It has been reintroduced. It introduces something that I think Saulo may not be very happy with, which is called zoning. Zoning, which means every sugar factory, wherever it is and its surrounding, a determined radius, can claim that radius as theirs. Why? Because in terms of long-term planning, you need to be sure that where are we going to get the raw material for what we are doing? So, to the extent that the farmers may not have been onboarded, I agree with Saulo. That was wrong. You cannot talk about people without involving them and hearing their voice. But to the extent that it has nothing for the farmers and for the ailing sugar sector, I a bit of disagree. There are good things, so it cannot all be bad, and I know Saulo agrees. It may not all be good, but it cannot all be bad. There are major and remarkable recommendations towards addressing the ailing sector. Now, if the people who are culpable, and this is the other thing I agree with Saulo about, we cannot move on without finding justice for the past. There have been actors who have previously been involved in bringing the sugar industry to its knees. There are cases that, for example, have others, and I've even stated expressly, so and so was involved in this. If you do not address the salient issue of people dipping their fingers in the cookie jar and getting away with it like nothing happened, what you're doing is that for the subsequent managers of these companies, they will think it is easy to go, loot, and take off. So that too needs to be looked at, especially in this era when we are saying we are fighting graft.
Kipruto, I see 8 recommendations here on this document that is quite elaborate. Which part of it don't you agree with?
Well, I've not said I don't agree with the recommendation.
So you are on the other side. You agree with it?
Mine is really to say the problem of the sugar industry is bigger than just the report. If you are to look at the report that Saulo Busolo, under the chairmanship of Fred Amayo, produced when I was minister, it is like they were cutting and pasting and adding additional things.
Really?
So this is the same report?
Important. Yes. Because the recommendations are the same recommendations we had and we implemented. The only problem with the sugar industry is lack of effective leadership from the government and government goodwill. We can pretend that we have now governors involved, you have the minister involved, but at the end of the day, if you don't involve the producers of the sugarcane, who actually produce 90% of the cane to these factories, then you are pretending. I put the problems of the sugar industry into 3 categories. One is issues of governance. That we'll be able to explain later. The second one is the issue of agronomy, including the need for research. The third is technical. In terms of technology, we need to ask ourselves, are the sugar industry factories still relevant today when the technology they are using was used 50 years ago? So those are the 3 broad issues, but the details of the report, I think we can engage section by section. Broadly speaking, there is nothing new. It's only the players that were new.
Wow.
These are recommendations we had in 2003.
Right.
When I was the Minister for Agriculture.
Faisal?
And he was a member of my task force.
Right.
Yeah.
Faisal, you have the challenges.
Yes, before we actually move to the recommendations and what the 3 gentlemen who are very versed in the sugar sector can actually recommend or agree with, we have to look at the challenges. One of them is high cost of production. We've seen sugar mills complaining about the high cost of power, the high debt portfolio. That will look into it actually a bit later on to see also how they're coping with issues to do with their interest that they're being charged on their loans. Acute cane shortage. We had talked about the declining yields of, which is actually the 4th challenge that the sector has actually been facing, the reducing acreage of the cane plantations and what that actually means for them. Low value addition initiatives, there are a lot of other areas that are actually involved or other byproducts that come out of cane, including ethanol. That is one area that needs to be looked at severely. Inadequate research and extensions. These are some of the challenges that the industry is actually facing, and also aging equipment, which Mushimi had actually mentioned. Some of these equipment are 40, 50 years old.
Right.
Technology has actually advanced to an extent that they cannot cope with the amount of production that needs to be done to meet industry standards.
Plus, even the safety of the workers with the machines as well.
Yes, and you know the technology is very old, and the guys who are working there are relatively young, so they cannot more or less relate. And the people who are operating these machineries have actually gone into retirement, making it even more inefficient, generally speaking.
And there's one of the challenges actually on the first slide on Aboki Pruto. Let's talk about this, the acute cane shortage. In the past 5 years, cane availability hasn't matched the factory capacity, plus a decline in our total cane hectare. Why the decline?
I talked of governance and the issue of also agronomy. When you are dealing with governance, you are supposed to effectively manage the production of cane to match the capacity of the factories. And you are also supposed to look at it in terms of when do you have so much cane, when do you mill it, and when you close the factory. What do you do in the intervening period? So the declining yields is a product of two things: lack of effective research and no effective land preparation, because you don't give farmers money at the right time. And you see, farming is timely. If you give me money in May, when you should have given me in January, so that I start preparing the fields to be ready for planting of cane in April and May, you'll be giving me money that I'm going to use it for other purposes. So those are some of the issues, and therefore it becomes more costly because what you are selling is the sugar at the supermarket. But the process of getting that sugar involves agronomy and also processing. As we say, this obsolete machinery makes the cost of production so high.
Can we also attach the issue of global warming to the reason why our cane hectares have reduced?
Yeah, global warming is a pervasive aspect. It affects us, it affects Mauritius and all over the world. So it is a constant. What we need to do is to look at the factors that we can control. I talked of the machinery. You know, compare an old Land Cruiser of 1965 and a new Land Cruiser, and you are moving on the same direction with the other person. You are using the fuel that you are going to use is going to be higher. The journey is going to take much longer for you to reach Kitale, assuming you are going to Kitale. And at the end of the day, you will be more tired than somebody who used the latest Range Rover or Land Rover.
Okay. So, Land Rover. We're talking about
Land Cruiser. So that is where it is. With the moving technology, you are supposed to be changing technology every year so that you are efficient in terms of production. Now, the other issue is the debt portfolio. The debt portfolio eats into the money of the factory. And therefore, at the end of the day, when you are declaring your profits, you are supposed also to declare profit minus the debt that you have reduced.
It's impossible.
Okay.
Which is impossible because some of the factories have, when I left the factory that in Mheshimiwa's home, farmers' arrears was 0. He has told me it's now 500 million. Really, you cannot pretend that thing is going to be efficient.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Saulo, if this was part of the recommendations that also you made previously, like Honorable Kibro is saying, why do you disagree with it now? Because most of these things that are there are actually on this recommendation. I can see them. There are 8 of them.
You see, during my time, and I have to declare my interest, I was a member of the Honorable Kiro's task force, and 2, I was also a director and at one time chairman of Kenya Sugar Board. And I wish to say to you, Honorable Kiro's thinking of the industry was an independent industry which was self-administering, self-financing with its own fund, Sugar Development Fund, which was self-arbitrating with the Sugar Arbitration Tribunal. So if that structure was still intact, I do not think the collapse of the industry could have taken the level it's taken this time. So over time, you know, reforms were being made, and I recall Honorable Kirwa insisted to the sugar mills then that the first charge, whatever earnings they made, was to pay the farmer. Nothing outside of that. But now, you see, over time, then the bureaucrats in the Ministry of Agriculture decide to do away with Kenya Sugar Board, Tea Board, Coffee Board, etc., create an overbearing body called AFA. Now, AFA definitely, and then also reformed the Agriculture Act, merged several laws into creating a body called AFA to administer the Crops Act. Then create regulations to govern the various crops. Now you can see the coffee people are rebelling, the tea people are rebelling, the sugar people, we are also rebelling because AFA has not served. In other words, the subsequent reforms after Honorable Kiro's exit from the ministry have not served. The importation, in fact, was taken over from the sugar board to the ministry. So the ministry fellows seem to have interests in the industry, control, taking us back to colonial times, where the colonial government wanted to control our farmers, so that the recommendations that come in when farmers were freeing themselves, now something like zoning, for instance, surely this is a repugnant law, absolutely in the era of private property and free trade and free market. How do you introduce zoning? Socam, why is Socam not zoned? Why is coffee not zoned? Why is tea not zoned? Why is there so much interest in enslaving the sugar producer? You see, the fact of the matter is, there is no law that prohibits Nzoia from selling sugar outside of Bungoma or West Kenya from selling sugar outside of its purview.
Right.
But they want to control the farmer. And this
But
is
as all
part
that
of
is
what
happening,
contributes.
Saulo, as all that is happening, more than 70% is imported. That means we can't even satisfy the need that we have.
But precisely, why? My brother Trevor, this country, Kenya, very powerful economy, combines almost the economies of Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, etc. How come, and we dominate, Kenya dominates commercial trade. How comes when it comes to sugar, there is a problem? And I don't think really it's a problem as such. These are the issues one of my senior, Honorable Kiro, is raising. Issue of governance, simply.
Right.
So it's not that we are unable. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, there is capacity for self-sufficiency. But the pay to the farmer, the exploitation of the farmer, these attempts to enslave the farmer, so some of them withdraw. They are not given enough adequate resources to increase production, so some of them withdraw.
Okay.
And the yields also go down. So that in the end, this statistic of shortfall, we need to question it.
So you don't think it's there?
I don't think it exists. It's there in the reality.
So
it's the bureaucrats, Kilimo and the Treasury, that have an interest in imports of sugar. Their interests. EACC has done a study of corruption in this industry,
right,
including imports, including mismanagement. And their conclusion is that it's deliberate attempts to keep the industry the way it is, so that rent can be earned by those, within the government. And in fact, to the extent that we farmers basically support privatization. And I think even if you look at the sentiment of the president when he directed that a task force be formed, the president was very categorical that farmers sell their cane to whoever pays them, to efficient mills. That was his directive.
Yeah.
Right.
But what has the task force done? It's gone against that directive.
Sure. David, now you sit on the Chemelil Sugar Company. I want us to talk about this, the high cost of production. We have the Big Four agenda. Manufacturing is inside there. We also know that any country's economy, a strong industry means industrial economy means a strong economy for a country. But we know here in Kenya, the reason why we don't have industries or the lack of sufficient strong industry muscles is because of the cost of production, electricity taking the biggest chunk. If we are not addressing electricity, are we fooling ourselves about reviving, leave alone the sugar industry, generally our manufacturing industry in Kenya?
I've said time upon number, and I will restate here. The president, for example, gave an instruction that the cost of electricity should come down for industries, especially SMEs. This would not pass for SMEs. Even that directive was not honored. To date, SMEs are still bearing the brunt of high cost of electricity. It means someone has deliberately decided to cut the president's feet and make him almost look inefficient. Listen, the reason I have restated that Mwangi Kiunjuri, for example, was a failure is because I sit on Chemelil Sugar Board. I know that if the governance is right, if the leadership is right, if there is determination to execute and ensure that some of these things are implemented, then it will be done.
So
and part of the biggest things that Munya will have achieved is to resolve this. The last week, 2 weeks ago, I saw brilliantly, he decided to deal with one of the biggest menaces in this country, which is the slaughter of donkeys that has really messed up the economy of those places. That's good. And here now is the sugar place.
Right.
Sort it out. The high cost of production is multifaceted.
So as long as we're not addressing the issue of electricity in this country, we are kidding ourselves about manufacturing then.
The electricity is one of the contributory factors.
The
Expensive electricity, very, very big. I know that when at Chemelil, the amount we pay to Kenya Power is ridiculous. If we redirected that towards research, for example, it would be great. But you also have to appreciate that Kenya has some laws that will play for it and play against it. When you go to Ethiopia, you know, we don't have the lowest income wage in Ethiopia. So you have the free trade area.
Right.
But that is not the case in Kenya. So in Ethiopia, you will be told, come if you can take 9,000 shillings. In Kenya, we will say you must pay everyone 13,000 shillings, which has its good and has its bad. The dynamics then change. But the high cost of production is also contributed to by the obsolete machinery. If you have machinery that are running on diesel in an era when solar is the option, which is almost free, and you have machinery that still runs on electricity,
right,
and we are not innovating, we are not doing our research towards ensuring that, one, the cane that we have is the best for the areas where they grow. Now, we come here and say we have N14, we have this cane. That's why research is a very key and fundamental part. There must be a deliberate attempt to foster research so that when the people in Zoya are growing their cane, there has been sufficient research that will demonstrate that in this area, because of the type of soil you have, because of the manure or chemicals that have fertilizers that have been used in your soil over time, the best cane yield, the best cane type is this. Use it. It will give you better yield. We do not do that, and we expect that we are going to match Mauritius, a country that has sugarcane as one of its greatest, tourist inviter into Mauritius, into Mauritius. And they have diversified and they've technologically advanced cane production, even Kenana, just across here. We think it has just happened by chance. There must be dedication. However, I revert to what Saulo said, which is zoning, which I know he has fought very hard. And he says correctly, in a globalizing world where we are continually becoming, we are dropping all the borders. In a trans-border world, there must be no need for what he believes is repugnant. But I must state here without equivocation or any circumlocution that whenever the game changes, then we have to change the rules of the game when it seems to be unfair. Competition authority has a task to do that. However independent the economy may be, the reason you don't see this in coffee is that we don't have, for example, coffee poaching. We have poaching of sugarcane, where the private players, because the government actors have not been funded sufficiently and do not have sufficient equipment, just come and raid the backyard, for example, of Chemelil Sugar. They take the cane belonging to Chemelil Sugar by night. They know Chemelil Sugar does not have the equipment to sort that out. Now, until you are able to fully and perfectly equip the players on both sides and ensure that they are able to deal with this, then it will become unfair competition to them. So let us agree. And you cannot decide you're sitting here without a plan for future, a long-term plan. That you just want to say, we are a global world, let anyone take what they may, it doesn't matter what is which. No. You have to know, we are Chemelil. Where are we going to get our sugar from? We must know, as we research, for what borders are we researching? How do we use our funds towards bettering the income of Chemelil?
Right.
Kipruto will come into the issue.
Very briefly. Regarding this issue of high cost of production, I think it needs to be stated at the outset that part of the problem of the high cost of production arises from this monocrop that we essentially, produce only sugar. So the wages, the operational costs, all of them are paid from only one product.
Okay.
But in successful sugar economies like Brazil, India, etc., like in Brazil, sugar is a byproduct. So essentially, they produce ethanol. And in terms of, with regard to, for instance, the multi-product industry that Brazil is into, this is what cheapens the cost of production. This is what makes production now low. When it comes to even other products like electricity, Mauritius is powered 60% electricity through cogeneration from sugarcane industry. In this country, if the bureaucrats were bright enough or clever enough, the sugar industry could also assist in creating green energy. In fact, we could transform the sugar industry from being a sugar industry into an energy industry, whereby the sugar contributes a lot to production of electricity, and this will now cheapen the cost. But given the kind of managers appointed by Kilimo to public mills, these are mismanagers.
But let me also state before,
they are not even innovative or imaginative on how to cheapen the cost.
Before the CS speaks, let me also state here, the burden weighing our sugar factories is immense. We need to sit with ourselves, look ourselves in the mirrors and tell ourselves, this is not going to be paid off. Chemelil today is paying tax debt of over 10 years ago, 20 years ago, accumulated over time, running into billions. Whenever we balance our books, you have to factor in that you are in debt of so much tens of billions.
And we'll come
now,
to talk
how
about
are you going to wake
issue.
up out of that? The government needs to say, okay, reality is, this is what it is. Write off the debt, give them a clean slate, put in place structures that will ensure correct governance and punishment in equal measure for any mismanagers of this. But I agree with the Saulo, and I've said here in one of your shows, I am not persuaded that the statistics that tells us the shortfall of sugar in this country is true. As a person who has done statistics and research, I am not persuaded that you will tell me that we are short of sugar to the tune of 70% for this country. I am not persuaded.
Honorable Kirwa, what do you make of this issue? Because one of the things that has been recommended here is synchronize the milling capacity with cane availability. That is out of the recommendation. In fact, they're saying that 2 or more mills should be clustered within a defined geographical region, and farmers have the freedom to contract with any miller within that region. You pose the question whether it's even relevant to have sugarcane growing today.
Well, at times when Kenyans find themselves in a quagmire, they look for the easy option. And the easy option is what I call at times the lazy option. If we wanted to think out of the box, remove all these, do 2 things. One, give farmers all the money that they can produce sugarcane. And sugarcane takes about 18 months before they are ready. Before the farmers bring sugarcane to the factory, go to Chemelil, remove all that obsolete machinery, throw it somewhere, bring new machinery with the latest technology. Go to Moroni, remove the receiver manager, throw him out of the office, remove the factory, take it away, and bring new technology. Go to Nzoia, write off the debt, remove the machinery that they are using, and bring new machinery. In the next 18 months, you'll be having new machinery, and you'll be having ready cane for milling. That's the only solution that you can have. Otherwise, this is just merry-go-round. We are wasting a lot of public resources, task force after another, and we are not doing anything sensible. Number 2, when we talk of issues of governance, the major problem in governance is lack of communication. The Kilimo House did not need to do all these issues of calling Oparanya and calling to Injurias, the co-chairs of this. They should have just called Busolo and had tea with me.
Thank you, sir.
And then we finish the story. Because, Trevor, we are pretending. We've been in this country and we are still here. But the problem is we like looking for new solutions to all the problems. What we need to do is to look for solutions for the problems of the day. The problems of today is technology has moved on. The technology that is there in Zoya is the technology of the 60s.
Right.
Now we are in 2020. Now we are talking of technology which is 60 years old. You want to do things the same old way. Now, when you get to Comesa region, you know Comesa is a sugar deficit region. So we in Kenya, what we need to do is to prepare ourselves so that we capture the market within the Comesa.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're pretending that we can catch up with Mauritius. And even the issue of cogeneration means the government must invest in that infrastructure. No single factory can do that alone unless they get some good money, and that money should come from the government.
All right, we need to take a commercial break. When we come back, we'll definitely talk about funding within the research department for sugar industry. As you've heard, it's one of the biggest things that has come out of that. But also Comesa, the free trade. It is good, but it's also sort of hampering our own local farmers, the same local farmers who have also insisted that not all the recommendations that they wanted on this report is there.
We'll be hearing from them as well. We have some reactions from the farmers on the ground. Let's hear what they're thinking. Ground.
Vitu kwa ground.
Vitu kwa ground, unajua what they say.
Yep, and Faisal will have more recommendations for us in a bit.